Hola, estudiantes. Today we're going to learn about gerunds and the progressive tenses. First of all, let's talk about what is a gerund, or a present participle is what it's sometimes called. In English, you know these as the words that end with ing. In Spanish, a gerund or present participle ends with either ando or yendo. A gerund is technically a noun that is formed from a verb, but what we're really going to be focusing on today, even though sometimes I call them gerunds, are really the present participles, which is a verb form that is used with the verb to be in order to indicate that an action is in progress or was in progress. Now, to talk about when and how we use the progressive tenses, I want to remind you of when we learned about the two verbs to be. We learned about ser and estar, and you learned the Dr. Place acronym to help differentiate when to use each of these. The one thing we kind of skipped over when we were learning about ser and estar was the A in the estar acronym for action, and this is where the progressive tenses come into play because we're now going to be using the verb estar with these present participles in order to form the progressive tenses. So let's take a look at what our estar conjugations look like as kind of a reminder. In the present progressive tense, we're going to be using the present tense conjugations of estar. Estoy, estás, está, estamos, estáis, están. These should look familiar to you. Here are a couple of examples. ¿Qué estás haciendo? What are you doing, or what are you making? Yo estoy bailando. I am dancing. ¿Qué está haciendo tu hermana? What is your sister doing, or what is your sister making? Let's also take a look at the past progressive tense. This would be using the imperfect conjugations of the verb estar. So we have estaba, estabas, estaba, estábamos, estabais, and estaban. Okay, so same questions, but now in the past. ¿Qué estabas haciendo? What were you doing, or what were you making? Yo estaba bailando. I was dancing. ¿Qué estaba haciendo tu hermana? What was your sister doing or making? Okay, so these should look somewhat familiar to you. You've been exposed to them. You've just never really learned how to master them. So that's what we're going to work on today. In order to form a gerund or a present participle, it's super easy. You just have to take the infinitive ending off, meaning the AR, ER, or IR verb ending, and then you replace it with your new gerund or present participle ending. If it's an AR verb, that ending would be ando. If it's an ER or IR verb, the ending is yendo. And that's all there is to it. You might be wondering, what about those verbs that already have back-to-back vowels? Would they then have 3 vowels in a row? That would look kind of weird. An example would be like in the verb leer. So if we took just the ER off and replaced it with yendo, then it would look like this. Leyendo, which kind of looks weird. It kind of sounds weird. And usually when something seems a little bit off or strange, it usually is wrong. So that is incorrect. What happens with those verbs that have back-to-back vowels, rather than using the IENDO, we're going to use a YENDO on those. So caer, creer, leer, oír. The bottom one is cut off, but it should be traer. Those will change into the gerund or present participle form. They'll have a YENDO, as in cayendo, creyendo, leyendo, oyendo, and although it's cut off your screen, trayendo would be the gerund or present participle for traer. Stem changing verbs are a little bit different. AR and ER verbs do not stem change in the gerund or present participle form at all, so that's nice and easy to remember. IR verbs, however, as you're learning, tend to be a little bit more tricky, and this is the rule for IR stem changing verbs. If it is normally an E to IE or E to I verb in the present tense, in the present participle, it's just going to change from an E to an I, as in the examples prefiriendo and consiguiendo. If it is an O to UE verb that ends with IR in the present tense, usually it changes O to UE. In the present participle or gerund form, it just changes O to U, as in the example, durmiendo. There are a couple of irregulars, and when I say a couple, I literally mean two of them. One of them is the verb ir, which changes to yendo, and poder, instead of saying being able to do something, instead of saying pudiendo, we say pudiendo. You might be wondering, so are there any other verbs besides estar that can be used with present participles? The answer is yes. Even though the verb estar is the most common verb to use with present participles or gerunds, sometimes we'll use some others, such as seguir, the verb you know as to keep or to follow. So an example here, ella sigue dibujando, she keeps drawing. Continuar, to continue, as in the example, los estudiantes continúan estudiando. The students continue studying. As you can see, these are all things that are in progress, which is why it's called the progressive tenses. Another verb that we sometimes use is andar. You might know the verb andar as to walk or to move about. You've maybe heard people say like, ándale, ándale, like keep walking, keep moving. And we can use that with present participles as well. Here's an example. Raúl anda comiendo todo el día. Raúl walks around eating all day, or he moves about doing this or that all day long. We can also use the verb ir, to go, as in this example. Vamos buscando los tesoros. We go about looking for the treasures, or let's go looking for the treasures. Another verb that sometimes is used with the present participles is empezar or comenzar, to start or to begin. This example is going to be cut off your screen, but it says empezando hablando con nuestros amigos. We start speaking with our friends. One more grammar rule I want to go over with you really quickly is how do we use object pronouns with our gerunds or present participles. Object pronouns, whether it's a direct object, indirect object, reflexive pronoun, whatever type of object pronoun it is, it can go before the conjugated verb, or it can be tacked onto the end of the gerund or present participle. So this is really similar to infinitive constructions you guys have used, like in the ir plus a plus infinitive formula or back-to-back verbs. Here's an example. I am eating it. If it is referring to la comida, which is singular and feminine, our direct object pronoun would be la, and I can put it before the conjugated verb, as in yo la estoy comiendo, or I can do the smash and attach where I add it to the end of my gerund, and then I get yo estoy comiéndola. Either way is correct. You just have to pick your personal preference and make sure you don't put your object pronoun in both places. It has to be one or the other, just like you learned with infinitive constructions. Okay, that wraps it up for our gerunds and the progressive tense lesson. You should have a homework assignment that you need to get started on now. If you have any questions or problems, let me know.